Thank you, Jacek, for joining me on the podcast today. I appreciate you taking the time. I've been following what you've been working on Farcaster for a while now. With you're the creator of DGen, a meme coin if you call it that, or a layer three if you want to, or whatever you want to whatever you want to call it. It's been a very interesting project and super fast moving. So it's been cool to watch, and we'll dig into that. But before we get into it. Would love to just kind of understand for those who don't know you, or maybe those who know you at a surface level but don't really know your story. Would love to hear your story from sort of as early as you're willing to start to where you are today and talk about some of the decisions you made along the way.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'd be happy to kind of talk about, my past a little bit. So I grew up in Santa Monica, which is like right near LA. Um, yeah, growing up, we were we were definitely, I would say, on the poorest side. Like we were, I didn't know my dad. My mom was a single mom. My mom's brother, my uncle was kind of helping out certain things. So it was a little bit, I guess, tough in that sense. We were definitely like living on welfare and things like that. So I'm not sure if I'm like super proud of that, but that wasn't really my choice. It was just like how they immigrated from Poland to the US. So it's kind of like the typical story you usually I think kind of hear. And so I ended up kind of like I don't know, in my early days, skateboarding a lot. I think that was like a big part of my story. Also, I kind of like picked up the violin, or that was kind of like something I did early on. So I think like music and skateboarding were kind of like the two things I sort of did. I didn't like the violin actually, so I actually like music a little bit later on. Like I think in high school, I kind of stopped skateboarding as much. And then I went into like more electronic music because we would always travel back to Poland. And like during the summers, I would basically, as a teenager, I started kind of like clubbing and doing like these kind of things, kind of fell in with that sort of crowd. And so basically, I kind of really fell in love with like trance and electro and all that kind of stuff. So that really wasn't happening in LA. So I kind of thought to myself, well, this seems like a new wave that's forming. It's definitely super hot in Europe. It doesn't seem like it's so hot over here in LA. It's mostly like rap and hip hop and sort of like rock was kind of like also around and things like that. So I kind of decided to start producing music, and that turned into like a full-time, well, not like a full-time thing, but like definitely took up a large portion of my like after hours after school and things like that. And yeah, it was good. Like I wasn't like that great at first, and then I started getting pretty good and got signed to some labels, made some connections, and I kind of got in. It's kind of like with DGen. I kind of got in right as that wave was sort of forming. And then I remember I think David Guetta made his first track with like Akon or something like that. I forget who they did it, and that was sort of like the genesis of like, oh, okay, like these little rave parties that were happening around like in San Bernardino and all these other places, they started kind of like ballooning into like these huge or like massive, like kind of massive festivals, and everything just started really popping off in the US. And I was kind of like there. I got to see some pretty cool things. Like I got to play with like basically like a warm-up set or something like that for Paul Van Dyke. That was pretty cool. I got to be on stage once with like DJ AM. I was hanging out backstage at EDC a few times and got to meet some cool people. So like it was definitely like for me, I was really happy with that. I was really happy to be part of that scene. But I think, oh yeah, one of my friends was actually Dioro, which ended up, we used to hang out like in this garage in Compton. And like he was like not known at all. And then Steve Aoki picked him up and then he became like, huge DJ and plays at like Tomorrowland, all those kind of places. So it was like, all the ingredients were there. But I was definitely not 100% in music. I was doing school and like you can't kind of like half-ass that kind of stuff. You have to be like all in. that's kind of like the startup world. Like if you try to do a project on the side, like 2 hours here, 2 hours there, it's like good luck kind of like you're
Right.
competing against people who are doing it, probably 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, so I
Maybe
don't know.
I
Uh-huh.
hesitate to interrupt, but it's so interesting of a story already. I'd like to kind of ask a couple of questions and then maybe we can, sort of pick up where we left off. But is this put me at a place in time right now? Like, is this all this music stuff's happening? Are you still in high school or is that, years have gone by at that point?
So yeah, that's basically late high school is when I started, and then basically in college is when I kind of got really into the scene, kind of started meeting some people.
Do you go to college
Uh,
out in LA or California as well?
yeah, so like in high school, I was kind of having a rough time, like not in terms of schoolwork. It's like in terms of school, I was like really good. I was in all like the AP classes, like learning things didn't come like hard to me, especially like math and science and that kind of stuff, not so much like the other areas.
Right.
So that stuff was going well, but I just kind of, I don't know, I wasn't in a good place. So I kind of started falling off. I started partying a lot, doing like these kind of things. And so music was kind of like, it was kind of like a place where I could also vent a little bit. And so I kind of found this like good and bad place for me. Because on the one side I was partying like heavily, like very, very heavily. And then on the other side, I was like really ambitious and trying to like form this career. And that didn't really pair well in general. And I think if I had just kind of eased up on the partying and just focused on the music and been like in a better headspace, things probably would have worked out really well. Because I really was at the right place at the right time, meeting the right people, and like some of my friends obviously went like really far. So
Right.
I definitely had the opportunities. And so this was college. So this was mostly
Okay.
college. Um, yeah, and
Yeah.
so I think I learned a lot from that, definitely. Like I learned like what not to do, like how not to wait, because like opportunities don't come around that often. And I definitely wasted that one. That was earlier on in my life, like in my 20s. That could have been used to its full potential and probably could have been like, basically successful like TJR, who's another person I used to hang out with here and there, and then like Dioro and all these people. And so like I definitely learned to like be a little bit more humble. Saw that the partying was kind of like messing up basically my whole life and everything I kind of was working for. So I had to like tone that down. And now I don't do it at all. Actually, I don't even drink. Um, so yeah, so that was a big learning lesson, but it was also fun. Like it was positive.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, it's interesting. There's well, first of all, I guess are you into music? Obviously, I'm sure you're still listening to music and stuff, but are you creating music at all anymore or not so much?
no,
Not
so I
these
got
days. I'm sure you're plenty busy these days, but like in general.
Yeah, I have this one friend who always like kind of like tries to get me into it or just keeps asking me or something about like, hey, are you making some music? But nah, I kind of lost track of all of that and started getting into programming and I studied computer science. So once and that was kind of like a slow start too. Like I kind of got into like programming and then like it was kind of like music where it just developed into this passion that I got really into. And I realized that, well, I can do this full time now. Basically, my job is to program, so I might as well just get really good at it. Um, and I liked it. It's kind of similar to music. You can be pretty creative. So I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, so a question around timing. You mentioned a couple times like the timing of getting into that music scene in LA, bringing it back from Europe is not really here in the US yet. It was like great timing. Similarly to your timing with like DGen and being on Warpcast and everything like that. And for people who are listening who maybe not be familiar with Warpcast or Farcaster or DGen or any of this, bear with us. Maybe you'll pick up a couple of interesting things and buy a bag or whatever. But I think it's an interesting theme to have been in the right place in the right time as you described it a couple of times. There's a couple of differences though. Like one is a very physical right place at the right time. Like being in LA, like around the music scene, stuff like that. The other is very digital, where you're in Poland and the people you're meeting and the things that are taking off, it's really like a global thing that actually happens to be think like a lot of the communities actually, to the extent that there is any concentration, there's a lot of people in LA, but it's very decentralized, obviously, globalized. But is there anything you think that is there is about you or something that sort of leads you to be in these right places at the right time, or any way in which you find yourself in those situations beyond just blind luck? I think a lot of people will like sort of lean on the crutch of the easy answer of like, I just got lucky. But if you really think about it, like there might be some things that sort of helped you get there. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Um, yeah, I think for sure there's some sort of like spark or excitement that I noticed somewhere. Like for instance with music, obviously that was, I don't know, like I had definitely some musical skill where I played the violin, so I had that like classical kind of I don't know, ear. And then I also, obviously was in that kind of party phase of high school and college. So this was really appealing to me to be, you know, to be there. But also I really liked what I was seeing. And I don't know, it just developed into this thing where I really, really liked it. I really, really enjoyed it. And I also had sort of like the skill set to be able to like contribute to it. And once I saw that like something's happening, I don't know, there's something that just generates some sort of like interest. And I saw that there's like demand, like I have demand for this kind of like music, for these kind of like parties, for this kind of stuff that's happening. I saw my friends sort of like really enjoying this kind of stuff. And so, or like at least I introduced a lot of them to it, and they kind of got into like their own different like scenes of EDM. So yeah, I don't know if there's like a formula or anything, but for sure there's just some sort of excitement about things for me that are not super well known or mainstream yet. But I can see that there's a group of like super passionate people like within this, because like once things get mainstream for me it becomes less appealing. Like I usually kind of like at that point I'm like, all right, this is kind of like mainstream, and now I'm less interested. So I tend to kind of go into these places which are not really being explored by a lot of people. I don't know, that's just the place that interests me, because I find that that's where all the passionate people are. And then once it goes mainstream, at least to me, it kind of feels like fake. So like you see like
Mm,
these huge like ultra music kind of events and things like that. And so you see people go there, they're mostly just like, a lot of them I feel just like on drugs or like all this kind of stuff. I mean, I get it. And they're just kind of like they're there to have fun. They don't even know who the DJ is half the time. It's kind of like, they're not even there for the music really. They're just there for kind of like the party, which I understand. Like I was part of that too, but I was also really part of like, I knew who everybody was. I knew what people were working on. I knew like the latest styles. I could see kind of like things emerging. And so like that's like, I don't know, I was passionate about that. Um, and so yeah, and then when I see like people just kind of like being like these drones followers, things like that, becomes like kind of for me like, this like maybe there's a lot of money there, and like if you've made it to that point and you can earn a living and live nicely and things like that, then you should probably do that. But yeah, for me, just the excitement isn't there anymore. Then it just becomes like almost like a day job. So yeah,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like kind of your natural disposition is to be kind of interested at the edges. And when you find those things that are feel early and exciting and match some skill set that you have that can be applied, you go in on it. Where, some people might recognize it but not go in. So there's like sort of a combination of the awareness and then the willingness to like sort of take the plunge, which is interesting. And it's especially interesting given, I think, your background, like growing up, like you said, didn't have money in the family and everything. I think a lot of times at least I've sort of realized in talking to a lot of entrepreneurs and founders and whatnot, people who achieve like extraordinary success, monetarily and otherwise, a lot of times, your story actually isn't very popular for people I've had on the podcast, at least, where people grew up like really poor. Like some people, they grow up like middle class or whatever, but I think it's less popular because people who grow up with some kind of stability, it's easier to then take like a next level of risk because your baseline is like okay. And like you can kind of fall back on a life that's like okay. But when you grow up with this like extreme scarcity, the downside is like really bad and you don't feel comfortable taking these risks. Was that something where, you were just kind of following your passions and obsessions? And like you said in high school, it's like, you were partying too much and everything like that. So maybe it wasn't even that thoughtful. You just kind of happened to accidentally follow, go down a rabbit hole or whatever that ended up being pretty interesting and seemed like it could lead to something. And so that sort of gave you the confidence to maybe continue doing that as life went on.
Yeah, for sure. There's like not that safety net that you might feel if you probably are, in a better off kind of position or um yeah, it's tough to say because at the same time, like I was super motivated to not be poor. Like that's like I just wanted to like have some level of success. And I don't think I ever really cared about like money um too much. I don't know, like I'm not really the type of person who would probably buy like a luxury car or like a luxury watch or something. But I definitely do see money as like being vitally important and basically allowing you to kind of have like these like freedoms.
Yeah.
And like so that I think from that perspective, like that was always important to me. And I think that is sort of like the American dream, of just being like not having to be like this kind of like slave, I guess, like to, not have to go to the office. Because like I went to the office like every day for like years and years and years after college. I worked at IBM, worked at Credit Suisse, worked at like mBank. And like Credit Suisse was actually not that bad. Like I enjoyed it. I loved it. It went bankrupt later. I think it's like they were a little bit of a DGen bank, I would say. But yeah, just that whole life for me, it's very uninteresting. You meet very uninteresting people, I feel like. And like I really enjoyed like the passionate people, like the people who are there when there's like 100%, like there's a ton of risk like to the downside that okay, this music thing won't work out, your startup won't work out. But like you're so like into it, you're so passionate about it that it just seems, I don't know. I just really love those types of people. And I feel like they're just super motivated, they work hard. And I am sort of that type of person. So maybe I just want to be in that crowd.
Right.
And I felt that I mean, I had a computer science degree. So that's kind of why I didn't take the plunge into music was to get that degree, and to kind of have that like safety net, I guess you could say. And so once I started earning some kind of money, and like the further along I went in my career, I kind of started feeling, all right, well, now I have this sort of safety net. I didn't have enough money to really kind of like go and help out my like mom or uncle too much. I just felt like I need to take care of myself right now because that's like I need that's what I need to do. And in order for me to like take care of other people that I kind of love and like and are in my life, I need to do this, and this is important.
Yeah.
So it does kind of suck, because in the back of my mind it's always like, man, like I wish I could be maybe helping them out a little bit more, or doing something else. Maybe I should probably, but I ended up quitting my job in November. I was like, I need to do something for myself here. I think there's some potential, and it would be nice, to come from a family, but at the same time, there's like this extreme motivation, I think, also that comes from that, where you're just kind of like, I really want to just push and make something happen, where otherwise maybe you might be more relaxed, but I don't think that's true either. I think there's all types of people and all types of classes, all types of backgrounds. You end up seeing them all kind of come together, and um, so yeah, it's been a weird journey, and it definitely has been tough from that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a very interesting journey, as weird as it may have been, and it's taking some interesting turns, especially as of late. Let's talk about a little bit about like your decision to quit in November. You ended up starting DGen a couple months later. I don't think that was probably part of your plan at the time that you quit. Maybe it was. But I did, my understanding is like you were either before that or after that, like sort of starting to lean into like consulting as opposed to, like the 9 to 5. And that definitely speaks to like that different lifestyle where, you know, you're your own boss and you make your own hours, you work when you want. There's more freedom there and there's more upside in terms of money where you can sort of, you know, generate your own success, determine your own success more so than, you know, depending on a salary. Um, so maybe you could talk a little bit about that and, you know, sort of the decision to quit. Was it to go full-time consulting? Was it ambitions to do something like a startup or something like that? What finally gave you, you know, the confidence to go and quit?
Um, yeah, so basically, I'd worked at Credit Suisse for about 4 years, 4.5 years, something like that. Then I went over, and then some of my friends, they started consulting here in Poland. Basically, they started their own kind of yeah, like these small kind of consultancy. This it's a one person company basically. It's kind of like a DBA, Polish version of a DBA. And so, um, yeah, and they started earning like way more money than I did at Credit Suisse, and I was getting like nice raises every year, and I was feeling like, okay, give me 10% more, 10% more, it's good. But then like my friends, they started like they just went off, and we were really close at Credit Suisse. I learned a ton there, and like without that, I wouldn't be the programmer that I am because they taught me, like they took me in as a junior, so I kind of felt like I paid my dues a little bit. I stayed there for like a while, but then people started kind of leaving. And yeah, I just saw that they were making like twice as much as I was. Plus with the company, they could like basically have expenditures, kind of lower their taxes by like spend like they could buy a car on a business, they could buy a laptop, and like I had to basically pay not only income tax, but then I had to pay value added tax in Europe. I had to basically pay like all these taxes. I was being like double taxed plus making half the amount of money that they were. So then when I saw that, I was like, all right, like I remember one night I couldn't even sleep when my friend told me how much he was making, which is not that much actually, but like for me back then, it was like, whoa, like, you're making twice as much. And I knew he was like at the same level. So like I got a little bit jealous that night, and I couldn't sleep at all. And so after that, I realized, all right, I need to just do this. Like, there's no point in being jealous. Like he's not doing this like to spite me. He's just telling me to like, do it as well. So I ended up doing it. So I consulted for mBank. But it's still a 9 to 5 job. So like they just hire you as a consultant, and they pay like, basically there's some like tax implications and things, and then you can get like a little bit more money, but you're still kind of like a wage slave. Like you still have to kind of do what they tell you, and you can't really like maximize that. Like I'm only one person, and unless I start hiring other people and things like that, um, then I guess I could do it. But then that's kind of like a different thing, I guess. I was
Right.
kind of working solo, and so I did that. And then Credit Suisse wanted me back, so I was happy to go there because they offered me even more money, and obviously money was like a big thing. So like finally, this was a point where I was finally like, wow, like this is like the first year of like I'm making like money where I can like go on a nice vacation, just kind of feel like, okay, I can like, I can live pretty comfortably now. I don't have to like rent a room with roommates and things. I could put something down on a mortgage potentially, and start kind of like living normally, let's say. Um so that was kind of that. And then I was at Credit Suisse for a while, but that the project wasn't yeah, Credit Suisse was kind of crumbling a little bit at that point. So that was okay. And then finally COVID hit, and COVID was like the turning point where people finally started like doing the remote work. And I signed up for the Y Combinator job board. I forget what it's called. And then yeah, I got an email from hedgehog.app, or maybe I applied to them. I'm actually wearing their sweatshirt. And I worked there for 2.5 years. And Colton was one of the guys who hired me as the CTO, and then he turned into the CEO. And super laid back, great like atmosphere. Everybody was basically from California, so we had like this like similar vibes. Um, and just like totally, like it was totally cool. I learned like, and that's when I really got into crypto. I got my like first Litecoin, or like some kind of coin on 4chan, like maybe like 15 years ago or 10 years ago, however long it was. But like I never really did too much with it. I did a little trading and things like that, but I never really went down this like rabbit hole. And then finally at HedgeHog, I started realizing that Colton started showing me all the technology, telling me about, and we were doing more centralized crypto finance, but he was also telling me about the decentralized part, and I started going down that rabbit hole and showing him even like different projects and things, even though I think he technically knows a little bit more about. He's very like into the technical weeds of everything. So no, yeah, that was great. And then after 2.5 years of that, so basically that leads us up to like late October of last year. So like a few months ago, I decided, all right, this is kind of like enough. There's various reasons for that. But basically, like everything was all good with the team and all that kind of stuff. But I did kind of want to be at HedgeHog to. I was kind of hoping we might accelerate a little bit faster, and I had kind of like a different idea of what things might look like
Right.
after 2.5 years, and they weren't quite where I was kind of thinking they would be. So I decided, all right, you know what, I'm just gonna start my own thing, and kind of just like learning from Colton and learning from the whole like basically from the founding team, basically. Yeah, I figured out like wow, like I got to kind of be beside them, see how like their interactions were, and I kind of felt like now I have the courage to maybe do this. And the final thing was going to DuneCon in early November. So Dune is like a platform with like SQL and things like that for people that don't know, for basically crypto analytics. And so that was, you know, I was a database developer from all my career basically. So that was perfect for me. I got into Dune, and so I went to Dune. I won the DuneCon hackathon the year before, sort of like virtually, like online. And so this year I was like, all right, I'm going to go. So I went there, and then I remember I talked to the CTO and the CEO, sort of at the bar, sort of at the event. But I remember at the event, the CTO was kind of telling me his story, and he kind of inspired me because he had a very similar thing where he was like trying to he got like a deal with his at his workplace where he would only have to work 4 days a week, and so one day would be like a non-paid day, and like that was big for him because now he would have 3 days where he could hack and like work on things. And then finally he was kind of like working a little bit less, I think, and then finally they just decided, you know what, we're just quitting. We have no idea what we're going to build because they had not built anything really useful. And then they were just thinking, because they worked together, the CEO and the CTO, and they just kind of jammed for a while, and they picked up on this idea of Dune and SQL analytics for blockchains, and they were just working like all the time. But he said, yeah, it was interesting because everybody was just like, congrats, when I was telling them like I quit my job.
Mm.
And like, and in my other sphere of like personal, there everyone's like, oh man, like what are you gonna do now, like are you okay? And like I was at DoomCon, totally different vibe. It was like, congrats man, like greatest decision ever. And so that's when I was like, oh man, like this is my crowd right here. And November I took it easy, chilled with family. And then December I was like, all right, now I'm doing this. And DGen came along. So
Right. So maybe we can just kind of pick up there and talk about the origin story of DGen. That's actually a pretty quick turnaround. I know, like, I've quit a couple of different jobs and looked for what's next, and it can take, months and months to land in that right thing if you're sort of, being patient and looking for the right thing. You stumbled upon this right thing, or came up with this right thing extremely quickly. How did that come about? Were you on Farcaster already at that time as well?
yeah, I've been on Farcaster since July of 2023. I don't know if that qualifies me as an OG, but I talked to Ted, who is like a big influencer on there, and she branded me as like, yeah, you're an OG. So so I feel like I am a little bit, not as much as they are, but so yeah, I was on Farcaster. I was hanging out in the DGen channel. Nobody was in that channel. And then in December, it started really to pick up, and I kind of saw that, and I was working on channels.fun. That was going to be my idea, like friend tech combined with Reddit subreddits. like, just put a bonding curve on a subreddit, and this is my genius idea. But actually, I thought it could have probably worked. I probably would have come up with something cool. But anyway, so I got like a bunch of signups and things. I was happy. And yeah, my initial thing was like, I'll give myself like 4 months. I have savings and things. And that's what I told my fiance. But secretly in my head, I was like, I'll probably work on this for like, I have enough savings. I can work on this for longer. But I told her I'll do this for like 4 months. And she was like, okay, that's fine. Like whatever. Like you should do it. And so that put like some pressure on me, because I was like, man, like I don't really want to eat into my savings. Like this, like we're trying to like move forward in our lives, like maybe get our own house, get our own kind of like weddings and things like that, like get our own finances settled. And I'm here kind of like now eating into our savings. So that was not like cool. But at the same time, she knew I wanted to do it and I wanted to do it. And I just felt like this is the one, like we don't have a kid yet or anything. So I was like, this is the one time I'll probably have a chance to do that before like we start a family or something like that. So I felt like I just need to go for it like 100%. So I was just working super hard. And then I don't know, maybe it's a little bit fate, but maybe it's also just being at the right place at the right time, but also just kind of just being able to spot things. I think I'm good at spotting these waves that kind of form. And like the thing about these waves is like you have to kind of be there, I feel like, at that spot with the right skill set, and also notice that there is a wave. And like either you catch that wave, this is the way I kind of envision it, or you don't catch the wave and it kind of like it's too late. And like if you're too early, it's not good either. So you have to kind of like catch it. And so I felt like I caught it. And that's just like, whoa, like I'm like super happy, because I was thinking that it would take months and months and months to like maybe even raise like a little bit of money to potentially like fuel another year of working on something. But then, and so like I was getting rejected, like people weren't talking to me. I try to like I applied to a bunch of places, and yeah, they weren't really talking to me. So um,
Was this
even
was this for DGen or for like channels? I think channels.fun you said.
Yeah, this was like for channels.fun, but honestly, I just had a bunch of ideas, and I was just kind of applying with my ideas and kind of telling them about, I think, maybe this. I wanted to do something maybe in crypto and music. I thought, okay, this maybe makes sense.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, yeah, I was applying with a bunch of different ideas. I talked to some VCs here and there, but I even tried to talk to one confirmation at DuneCon. Richard Chen was there. He was speaking, and I didn't get it. Like I DM'd him on Twitter, he didn't respond. Like a few weeks before the event, and then I saw him there, and he was just like everybody was kind of coming up to him like, hey, pitching their ideas. And then I saw him at the bar, and I was like, I'm not gonna annoy him like this. Like it's like I need to have something more in hand, and like it's better if he hears about me than if I have to like basically pitch it to him. And
Right.
I don't think they were that type of people anyway. Like I don't think they can be pitched. They need to like actually like use the thing themselves. So
Right.
and so it was all like fate almost in a way, but also like picking up on the signals, working really hard when I saw the signals. And yeah, like I don't know, like I feel like blessed for sure. Like this is like insane. Just like I would have never thought this would have exploded to the heights that it has now. So there's definitely this part of me thinking back to like my childhood and stuff. Like I'm not gonna let this thing like go. Like I'm gonna like this if this is like my big chance, like after like music and like the whole like stuff that I kind of messed up, like I cannot mess this up. Like I need to like really, if I need to spend night and day on this and like not even like eat or something, just because like I'm at my computer all the time, then so be it. Like I like this doesn't come around. Like like I think some people think there's like opportunities on the streets like left and right. If you just work really hard, you'll pick one up. But like from my experience, it's like it's more like a wave, and like you need to be there and you with the right skills and be able to ride that wave. And if you're and they happen here and there, and maybe you only get a couple in your lifetime. That's kind of my mentality, at least. And like I needed to ride this wave, because maybe the next wave for me might happen 10 years from now, and or maybe I might not even get another chance. So like this one is super crucial to me. and I'm super happy like how things have worked out and like super dedicated to it. And that's why I didn't want to do like a short term. Like once I saw the interest, I was like, there's something here. Like, I'm not just gonna dump all the coins like a lot of projects do, like just distribute everything immediately. And I was really thinking like, how can I actually do this so that this could potentially set me up financially just for life, but also it could give me something to do like as a project for the rest, like for the foreseeable future. Like if DGen could be my job, it could be a company, it could be a foundation, whatever the right structure is, and like we could build this out into something like really big, then that's perfect. Then I could like, it doesn't have to be Microsoft, but if it could still be pretty big, then yeah, so that's where I'm coming from.
It's interesting because we talked about like your stint in music growing up where like you were really into the music, but you were also like really into the partying, and like the people who tend to succeed a lot like in music are sort of, they're talking about the partying and like they're playing music at the parties, but they're not partying as much. It's kind of hard to do both. And here like with DGen, you're it seems like you kind of like learned the lesson, like you can't be like a DGen and build DGen in a sense. Like obviously there's like a better version of DGen that you probably like identify with and everything like that, but you can't like really just be like, short-term minded and just gambling and, doing whatever and not being thoughtful and whatever, trying to like pull rugs on people and whatever. Like that doesn't that's not going to work in the long run. But if you can be kind of like responsible and like thoughtful and long-term oriented and really motivated and work hard, then you can make DGen work. And like that's how, and you have. So, some people listening probably are familiar, but for those who aren't, can we talk about like sort of the core features of DGen? Like to me, the most interesting part that kind of got me involved in the first place was actually this. I don't know, like, utility is thrown around as like a word that, has, I don't know, various people mean different things or whatever. But to me, it has utility and that it's useful and that it's fun in that basically the way that I got introduced to it was like people started commenting or replying to my casts or, the equivalent of like a tweet on Warpcast with, $100 DGen or $1,000 DGen. I'll give him a shout out. I think Phil from Farcaster from Warpcast, who actually was on the podcast. I think he gave me 100,000 DGen. I should go back and check, but it
Oh
was like,
man.
yeah, it was like a massive tip. And I didn't even at this point, I literally didn't know what it was. This was like maybe the third or fourth person to like reply to one of my casts with this DGen thing that I sort of, eventually looked into and realized like they were tipping me something that actually had value that I could, redeem and claim on the website dgen.tips. And, these tips that people are leaving just by commenting or replying on my casts were actually worth points, which translated to the currency, which was actually redeemable like at the end of every month. And I think there's been like two of those so far. And, we're in the middle of a third one. So there's this really interesting sort of concept of tipping where people are given an allocation or an allowance on how much they can tip based on how, you know, in simplified terms, like how good of a user they are, how good of a content creator they are on Warpcast, how much engagement their casts get. And then similarly, the people who get the tips are people who are posting high quality content. So it's sort of this currency that's encouraging um, positive, good, engaging behavior on this new decentralized social network. So that was like the really interesting thing to me. I'm not sure if that was the thing for you up front, but maybe you could talk about sort of inventing DGen.
Yeah, so I've had like more time to think about it a little bit. I think when I was doing it, it was all kind of I mean, it was thought out in the sense that like I would look at other projects and kind of get influenced by them and realize that like I can't innovate on every little detail. Like I can piece together things, and that in itself might be an innovation. So I looked at Blur, I looked at Uniswap for tokenomics, and obviously from Blur I pulled quite a lot. Like they're pretty genius in my eye. Like Pac-Man, like I think is just like one of the greatest builders. So just seeing like his points meta, Like just that idea of like giving people points, I thought was awesome. And then that was kind of copied across all kinds of different apps. And then I really liked friend tech, even though I know a lot of people were kind of not drawn to it, or they kind of got they went into it and then they kind of left. But I really think that Racer is also a really great builder, and I'm gonna have the chance to meet with them actually. So that's I'm super hyped for that, because like these two guys, Pacman and Racer, just really I think have influenced me in my thinking and the way like they do things. Um, so I saw the points and I kind of felt like it wasn't like thought out, it was more like intuitive, like okay, I've seen points around, let's do points. How do we do points like on Blur? You're obviously trading NFTs. Like what are you doing here on Farcaster? So you're getting likes, reactions, and then I figured out that you could also connect a wallet to your Farcaster account, and then I could pull in on-chain data. And so that was an interesting thing, like to see like, okay, you have NFTs, you have this kind of stuff. So the first airdrop was a lot of it was based on the NFTs you own, the projects you were a part of, like Kiwi, or which is like Hacker News for crypto, and like all kind of different things like that. So I thought that was cool. I think a lot of people enjoyed kind of being like finding out the different NFTs that different projects were kind of like posting up to me, and then I was posting them as boosts, and that was cool. And then like airdrop 2 was tipping. I didn't think I was going to do tipping. I thought like, okay, like this is probably a good time for me to like make an app and just do like a typical startup, like create an application. And I was thinking of DGen more as like maybe a security, and like more as like a stock in a company or something like that, and less as like a currency and like as a platform. So that was my initial idea, was like I'll create a game kind of like Pearl is on Farcaster. If people are on there, it's like basically a prediction market kind of game for Farcaster. And so that was basically my idea. But then I went down the list. I have this friend, Jay from ethxy.com. I really love him as well. He came up with like a really innovative, well, not in, yeah, it was cool. I really like what he made over there. Basically, it was like $1 million homepage, but with an ETH twist, DeFi twist. So when I saw that, I got into contact with him. Somebody connected us, and we've been talking a lot. And basically, he ran down a list of items that I had kind of written down, or told him basically, and like at the end of the list was like, well, maybe I could do tipping, and that's what he was like, whoa, like like screw all these other ideas. Like, what is this tipping thing? And so then I told him about it. He's like, well, how long do you think it would take you to implement? I was like, I don't know, like 5 hours or something. It's not that, like I'm not gonna do like it's all gonna be off chain. It'll be simple. And it's like, yeah, just do it. Like if that's like the minimal effort and maximum impact, then like don't bother creating like these like apps. Like how long is it gonna take you to make an app? Like probably weeks. So like just do that and see what happens. And I did that, and it like blew some people's minds. Like I got some like texts and DMs and things, and people were like really just like, whoa, like I'd never like they were like really impressed. Um, and I guess one of the cool things that I'm kind of thinking about now is that like the points are kind of like karma, because Farcaster or Warpcaster, I guess the clients, they don't really have like karma like Reddit does. And that's like a key aspect to a lot of different content creation like websites. So like typically, I don't know. I think the karma on Reddit was really cool. And so I felt like, so maybe that's kind of what I'm doing here is I'm giving people karma. I'm giving them like an algorithm by which we can say this user is high value, high quality. This one's a little bit lesser quality. But not only that, I'm giving the high quality users a way to signal other users. So now they have these, so it's easy to find like the higher, well, it's not that easy, but so we could find like the higher quality user based on like number of likes and like all these other things. And there's probably a lot of different ways to do it. And that's something I want to innovate on. But now let's say we have this group and they have these tip allowances. Now they can go out and they can like signal on people who are lesser known, because that's always been a problem, especially on established platforms like Twitter. Like, okay, you're this big guy on Twitter or something. Maybe you were early on the platform usually, and then you kind of grew with it and things like that. Maybe there's some other thing that went on. But it's usually hard to like really get like bootstrapped and start your own account and without farming, without buying like followers and likes. But this way, you could potentially get like these bigger kind of OGs on Farcaster to kind of like signal on different people and say, I'll give you a tip, I'll give you a tip. And I think the visibility of that isn't that great yet on DGen debt tips. But if we can make the visibility like greater, like where are the tips flowing to from like some of these big guys, you know, and like obviously the more tips you get, that means the more people kind of like you. And it's an interesting thing because a like is binary. So a like just says like yes or no, I like your comment. But like there's so much more to that because if you get a like from somebody who is like an OG or somebody who's just like really popular, then that's a much bigger like than a like from somebody who just joined the platform. And so the tip allowances kind of allow that difference to kind of be seen. And so like a big person will have a big allowance and they could give you a big tip. And that's much more different than getting a just a binary like from that person. That won't change your statistics. But with the tip, you actually get that you get that other dimension. You get that kind of depth of like, wow, like you have a lot of depth here. Like you just came, but there's people who are really liking what you're doing in a big way. And so then we could signal those guys so I think there's a lot to be done in this space. Like there's like this whole SocialFi narrative that's happening. I think there's like a ton that couldn't be done earlier, but it can be done now, especially with sort of like the rails we have here with Farcaster. So I think that part's fascinating. And that's just the tipping part. That's not even like the L3.
Yeah, so maybe we can get into the L3 a little bit, or a question that sort of occurs to me is like, with tipping as it is now, like we talked about, you reply and you type, $100 DGen, and it's great in that you don't need to like download anything or go anywhere different than you already go. Like you're just on this, I've been on Warpcast for a while, and I'm just going to this feed that I'm used to going on, and here's this new thing that I can do. I don't, it's not just liking or recasting or whatever. I can now give tips, and it's a ton of fun. And I find myself doing it a lot because, to your point, it's like a like is binary, and they don't really feel that meaningful. Like obviously in DGen context, they're meaningful in the sense that they are factored into like your allowance and things like that. But it's just different. It's a different way to react, to give a tip. And to me, when someone does something of high quality now, I'm like, well, I have these tips. If I don't use them, they go away. I might, that's probably one of the best things I'm going to see all day today. I'm going to give a tip. Um, is there any like any intrigue or reason to like one of the things, I guess I'll rewind a little bit. One of the things, you mentioned friend.tech. Before that, there was like BitClout. I don't know if you played around with that at all, but it was a similar thing. It was, friend.tech was on base. BitClout was its own like sort of, if anything, it was maybe more competitive with like a Farcaster type of thing. They tried to create their own like decentralized social protocol, but it was similar. You're investing in profiles or speculating on profiles, and it goes up on a bond curve. And it was similar to friend.tech in that it like spiked really fast and then kind of died out, and maybe it comes back at some point. I don't know, but these social dynamics are pretty interesting. And the thing with BitClout that I always thought like it was similar to Farcaster, where it's like there should be many clients. And I think like a key point for a BitClout or a Farcaster is when you have clients that are not created by the team that created the protocol. When those emerge and potentially become more popular than the original client by the people by the team that made the protocol, that would seem like a really awesome milestone. And I've questioned whether that's even really possible, because of sort of like the power law and things. Like maybe the client created by the original team is always going to be most popular, but there'll be other ones that can be second and third or whatever. But DGen is like one of those things that maybe could sort of create a client and I don't know, at least sort of like get to a level similar to Warpcast potentially. Is that something that's intriguing at all, just to make all of this sort of more native and do the things the way that exactly how you would want to do them, or not really?
Yeah, I think it's kind of difficult to compete with with Warpcaster a little bit. I was kind of thinking that they do have like a little bit of a head start. But then I also was kind of convinced by some people, well, you know what, this started like saying that you're competing with somebody maybe doesn't make sense like in this like startup world because there's so much real estate is what they kind of like some people kind of like showed me. It's kind of like being on an island and trying to compete like you and a couple people on a huge island and trying to like fight with sticks over like who gets a piece of the beach when there's like so much like sand and beach to go around. You're just not seeing it. So
Yeah, it's
it's
not a fixed pie.
yeah, exactly. So I feel like yeah, exactly. So it kind of feels like maybe I shouldn't be because I was kind of worried, like, I'll do this client, but then Warpcaster will probably just, they have like a bunch of engineers, they're well funded. I think they raised that like $1 billion valuation recently, somebody told me or something. So it kind of felt like, man, like going up against this is going to be kind of difficult. So, but then I'm kind of thinking, well, then maybe there is room for something like that. But now with the L3, and kind of like, I don't want to necessarily maybe a client would be cool. I think like a lot of people have kind of like come to me and been like, yeah, you know, this client idea is cool. I'd probably use it. But it is a big undertaking. So it kind of feels like, how can I make bigger impacts using kind of, um, well, just kind of leveraging the time that I have. I think one person is going to join DGen. I really hope so. That would be cool. We'll see by the end of maybe this month if they decide and if they can join kind of relatively quickly. But yeah, and like you know, there's so many things to take into account, like the cycle. Like I kind of think this bull cycle may be, you know, maybe up to the elections, maybe early next year or something, and then the cycle kind of like ends. And like, am I going to be building this app right up till the end and then release it like right into like another bear or like a flat market?
Right.
So like I'm kind of thinking about those things. So I'm kind of thinking right now, what are like the big moves, the big impact moves that I can make using the least amount of effort, just being like a one-person team right now, and doing something really cool, generating that excitement, building like this foundation so that maybe, yeah, one day if the L3 isn't the main thing for some reason, or like tipping kind of goes away because tipping maybe is replaced by like, I don't know, ERC20 support in channels, or maybe Warpcaster does their own kind of thing, their own token, or I don't know, who knows what they'll do. So so maybe at least, you know, not at least now we're a little bit diversified because we have the L3. You don't have to just rely on like tipping for distribution. So uh yeah, and so I think if we can build a solid foundation, then maybe it makes sense at one point to maybe experiment in this area, especially since now we have the L3 and maybe we could build that on the L3. Maybe that would make a lot of sense, like super cheap transactions. And especially we could build in like tipping or something like that. And then you could have like these micro payments of like a few cents and you're only paying like a billionth of a penny in transaction costs, whereas you're paying like 1 to 10 cents in transaction costs on base, or somewhere else if you're building there. So yeah, I don't know. I like I leave the door kind of open, but for now I think the L3 is like the main thing that we got to focus on, and also improving tipping and just keep kind of like keep the machine kind of going. um Try and take advantage of the bull cycle, try and take advantage that people are hyped, that there is price appreciation, that we can create a substantial treasury, and hopefully that treasury kind of bridges us over into the following kind of like cycle, whatever that might be. But we have enough to like keep building and then maybe explore these areas. But building something really substantial right now, taking a huge risk of like time and just like like infusing it like all our time into one app, and then either releasing it at the end of a cycle when people are like less hyped about it, or releasing it even when they are hyped but it just maybe turns out not to be as cool as people thought. Might I think might turn out to be like a big waste of our time now, and that's something we could always build a year from now
Right.
and come back to. So that's my thinking.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you're saying, that all makes a ton of sense, and it's really thoughtful. I think as you're talking about it all, it brings me back to what you were saying earlier about like identifying the wave and then being able to catch the wave. And if you're a little early, you're not going to get it, and if you're a little late, you're not going to get it. Even if you know, even if you see the wave correctly and you know how to catch it, the timing is super important. So thinking about things with time, like first and foremost in your timing, first and foremost in your head, I think makes a ton of sense. And for all the reasons you just said, like, building on an app, going into this large endeavor that you might not be able to get until sort of a bad timing relative to the wave, isn't really the move. So I know we're coming up on time here, and I appreciate all the time you've taken. Last question is just on that decision that you made to go for the L3 as like a first priority. Why'd you do that? And how do you feel about sort of the status of things, as of today? Obviously, things are really quickly moving, but how do you feel about where things are right now?
Yeah, no, I'm super happy. I had no idea like so many people were going to bridge onto the L3. Um, I'm a little bit less happy about the fact that, well, I'm less happy that I didn't get to be as hands-on because I like to be more hands-on. So Syndicate took like a really big lead role. They did everything basically. I mean, I kind of came up with some like basic ideas, but they basically did all the dev work and stuff, which is great. Like I'm super happy, and they're degens themselves. They hold degen and things like that. So it feels great, but I do want to get more into the weeds. And now that I realize like, whoa, like I didn't think it was gonna be that. I thought like, okay, we'll put it out there, we'll see what happens. But then all these people bridged over, and there's a problem with bridging back right now, like 7 days. So there's all these kinks that need to be worked out. But the fact that there's so many people willing to try things out there's people creating meme coins, which might be a little bit scammy right now, and like creating all kind of like different other things. But I think we can make it very legitimate, and like there's going to be like a deploy on DGen initiative that we're coming out with to kind of like support builders, get them building like cool things, fun thing, like especially fun. That's the main word, I think. This is supposed to be like the Las Vegas of blockchains. Like come here to have fun, bridge over the funds you kind of want to, spend and kind of like, for this whole experience. And maybe you come back with full bags to base, maybe you don't. But I think, yeah, I think, and then also like if we could really create this ecosystem, like create an app store for the DGen chain. Like imagine if Dogecoin had an app store. I think everybody in crypto would at least go there once every while to see like what is the top Dogecoin app, just out of curiosity. And it feels like they never kind of did that on their chain, but maybe we could do that on our chain and really, really just kind of like create this ecosystem. It doesn't have to be as big as the Google Play Store, but it can be a good place for indie devs. It could be a good place for startups. If you don't want to release your own token for legal reasons or for various reasons, it's not that easy to get your token listed on exchange, all that kind of stuff, and you just want to pick a DGen as like a tool and use it to kind of leverage the community, have your own token, and kind of like build an app around it. I think that's a good idea. Low transaction cost. And then, of course, from us, I mean, we do want to eventually become not just, tied to the price of DGen and like all our bags are just tied to that. That's good. But like also like figure out a way, how can we make revenue? And I think revenue could be a source of income, like basically having those sequencer fees, even though like the fees are like the transaction fees are really, really low. But like if you get a lot of people on there, then that gives us like, money for like a treasury, for ongoing costs, for hiring. Because that's why I'm hesitant to hire people right now, because yeah, we have these kind of big bags and we can like there's a good amount of money. But like if you're just spending all the time, but you're not earning, it doesn't feel like it's the right time yet. Still, like if there's not even like a dollar coming in of revenue, it kind of feels like we still don't have that product market fit. We just still don't have that idea. It's still time to like iterate. And then once we do have that kind of like, all right, well now there's some kind of inflows. Well, then maybe then it's time to like maybe accelerate higher, maybe really blow it up. But right now I feel like this has the biggest potential to maybe generate some revenue and really like form like a DGen as a business, like kind of like you see Pudgy Penguins, where it's a funny NFT, it's cool, but they got it into Walmart and they really made a business out of it. And DGens obviously also buy NFTs, and so like I don't know, I kind of want to pick that up and do that kind of playbook. Not the Pudgy Penguins one, but just the general playbook of taking something less serious and making it into a business that's fun, um, and has a lot of potential. But the kind of foundation was always like DGen, or like it wasn't like a super serious thing. So I don't know. That's my idea.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate you sharing all that. It's been an awesome conversation, and I really appreciate the time. I'm really happy for you and excited to see where all of this goes. You're obviously a super thoughtful guy and have built something that has really struck a chord. And suffice to say, you've caught the wave on this one. So, maybe missed the music one or whatever, but perhaps for the best given where everything has gone. And just looking forward to seeing how this goes for you. And I'll be on Warpcast tipping people in DGen for the foreseeable future. So thanks again for taking the time and looking forward to keeping in touch.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. And like this was fun. I'm happy I got to kind of tell my personal story a little bit more because I've been hesitant to do that. But yeah, that's no, cool. Thanks for having me.